You have exactly 10 seconds to move, sir. The boy couldn't have been older than 6, but the certainty in his voice stopped me more effectively than any armed guard ever had. I had just stepped through the glass doors of St. Catherine's Medical Center when his small hand caught the sleeve of my coat. Around us, the hospital lobby moved in its usual rhythm, rubber soles squeaking across polished floors, phones ringing behind the reception desk, an elevator chiming somewhere beyond the marble columns. My security team reacted before I did. 3 men shifted closer, their dark suits cutting through the morning crowd like shadows. The boy didn't flinch. He simply pointed toward the ceiling above me. A maintenance worker stood on a ladder nearly 20 feet away, struggling to secure a large decorative panel that had come loose from its frame. The metal brackets groaned. I heard the sound 1 second before the panel dropped. My head of security pulled me backward, but it was the boy's warning that had given us time. The panel struck the floor where I had been standing, sending a sharp crack through the lobby. Everyone froze. Then the noise returned all at once. Shouts, hurried footsteps, someone calling for maintenance. I barely heard any of it. I was staring at the child. He wore a navy hoodie beneath a green winter coat, one shoelace untied, a folded paper dinosaur clutched in his left hand. His brown hair had fallen across his forehead, and his eyes were gray. Not blue, not green, gray. The exact color mine became when the sky threatened snow. "Are you okay?" he asked. I had spent 15 years making powerful men lower their voices when I entered a room. Yet this small stranger looked at me without fear, as though I were simply another adult who needed help. "I'm fine," I said. My voice sounded unfamiliar, softer than I intended. He nodded seriously. "You should look up more." One of my men coughed to hide a laugh. I ignored him. "What's your name?" The boy glanced toward the elevators before answering. "Ethan." Something tightened behind my ribs. I didn't know why. It was an ordinary name, an ordinary child, but there was something in the way he studied me, something careful and strangely familiar. "Ethan what?" I asked. His expression changed, not fear, caution. He pulled the paper dinosaur closer to his chest. "My mom says I shouldn't tell strangers my last name. Your mother is right." That made him smile. It was brief, crooked at one corner. My breath stopped. 7 years disappeared in an instant. A summer evening on a rooftop. Wind lifting strands of auburn hair across a woman's face. Claire laughing at something I had said, her smile tilting the same way. Claire Bennett, the woman I had trusted with every secret worth keeping. The woman I believed had handed those secrets to my enemies before vanishing without a word. I had spent years teaching myself to hate her, because hatred was easier to carry than grief. Now a little boy stood in front of me, wearing her smile. "Why are you looking at me like that?" Ethan asked. Before I could answer, the elevator doors opened. A woman stepped out holding a paper cup and a small pharmacy bag. She wore a cream sweater beneath a worn wool coat, and her hair was pulled into a loose knot at the back of her neck. I knew her before she lifted her face. Some people change with time. Claire had changed because of it. There were faint shadows beneath her eyes, a guardedness in the way she moved. But she was still the only person who had ever made silence feel like an answer. The cup slipped from her fingers. It hit the floor, spilling coffee across the white tile. "Ethan," she whispered. The boy turned toward her. "Mom, I helped him." Claire didn't look at the fallen cup. She didn't look at my guards or the shattered panel behind me. Her eyes stayed on mine, wide and pale, with the kind of fear that doesn't begin in the present. I looked from her to the child. 6 years old, maybe almost 7, gray eyes, brown hair, her smile, my face. The entire lobby seemed to narrow around us until there was no hospital, no crowd, no men waiting for my command. Only Claire, the boy, and a question I was suddenly terrified to ask. "Why," I said, barely recognizing my own voice, "does your son look exactly like me?" Claire moved before I finished the question. She crossed the lobby in 3 quick steps, caught Ethan by the shoulders, and pulled him close enough that his paper dinosaur crumpled between them. "We are leaving," she said. Her voice was calm, but her hands were not. I saw the tremor in her fingers as she fixed his hood and checked his face, as though I had become the danger she had spent years preparing for. "Mom, he almost got hurt," Ethan said. "I know. I helped him. I know, sweetheart." She never looked away from me. The coffee spread across the tile between us, dark and steaming beneath the hospital lights. One of the nurses approached with paper towels, then stopped when she noticed my security team. Claire used the hesitation. She turned Ethan toward the exit. "Claire." Her name left my mouth quietly, but it carried across the space. She froze. 7 years ago, she had disappeared without saying goodbye. Now she stood 10 feet from me, with a child who had my eyes, and she still looked ready to vanish. "Do not," she said. The words were barely louder than a breath. "Do not what? Do not say my name like you still know me." Ethan looked up at her. "Mom, who is he?" Claire swallowed. I watched the movement in her throat. Someone from a long time ago. A friend? The silence that followed was sharper than any answer. I stepped closer. My men stayed behind me. For once, I did not want their presence. I did not want the hospital, the witnesses, or the weight of the life I had built surrounding this moment. I wanted the truth. "How old is he?" I asked. Claire's face hardened. "That is none of your business. He looks like me. A lot of people have gray eyes. He has my face." "You see yourself everywhere, Adrian. You always did." The accusation should have angered me. Instead, it landed somewhere deeper. Ethan studied me with open curiosity, tracing the line of my jaw, my hair, the scar near my eyebrow. Then he touched the same place on his own face, as though comparing 2 drawings. "We do look alike," he said. Claire closed her eyes for half a second. That was all I needed. Not proof, not yet. But fear has a language, and I had spent most of my life learning to read it. "Ethan," she said, "go stand by the front desk. But I want to hear, please." Something in her tone made him obey. He walked away slowly, glancing back twice before stopping near the receptionist. Claire waited until he was out of earshot. Then she faced me fully. "You need to leave us alone. Is he my son?" The question came out lower than I expected. She flinched as though the words had touched an old wound. "You do not get to ask me that here." "Then tell me where." "There is nowhere." "Claire." "No." Her voice cracked, then steadied. "You believed I betrayed you. You let people search for me. You made it clear what would happen if I came back. I searched because you vanished. You searched because you wanted someone to blame." The lobby noise faded again. I remembered every report placed on my desk, every false lead, every night I told myself I wanted justice, when what I wanted was one more chance to ask why. "I thought you gave them information," I said. "You thought what they wanted you to think. Who are they?" Her gaze shifted toward Ethan. "That question is 7 years too late." She walked away from me and took her son's hand. Ethan looked back over his shoulder as they reached the doors. "Goodbye, sir," he called. The glass doors opened, letting in a rush of cold January air. Claire hurried him outside toward the curb, where a yellow cab was waiting. I should have stopped them. Every man around me expected the command. I gave none. I watched Claire open the rear door, watched Ethan climb inside, watched her pause before following him. For one suspended second, she looked back at me through the glass. There was anger in her face. There was fear. But beneath both, there was something worse. Grief. The cab pulled into traffic and disappeared beneath the gray morning sky. My head of security stepped beside me. "Do you want us to follow them?" I looked down at the floor. Near my shoe lay the paper dinosaur Ethan had dropped. I picked it up carefully and unfolded one crushed wing. Written across the bottom in a child's uneven handwriting were 3 words that emptied the air from my lungs. For Family Day. I kept the paper dinosaur in my hand all the way back to the car. The city moved beyond the tinted windows, gray buildings sliding past beneath a pale January sky, but I saw none of it. 3 words had become heavier than every secret I had ever carried. For Family Day. I unfolded the paper again, smoothing the creases with my thumb. The dinosaur had been drawn in green crayon, its crooked smile too large for its face. On the inside, beneath one folded leg, Ethan had written a name, Uncle Daniel. Relief came first, fast, shameful. Then suspicion followed. "Find out who Daniel is," I told Marcus, my head of security. He sat across from me, tablet already in his hands. "Last name, I do not know. Claire Bennett has been difficult to trace. She was difficult to trace because someone helped her disappear." Marcus looked up. "You think she had protection?" I watched a yellow cab turn onto Lexington Avenue and vanish behind a bus. I think I was supposed to stop looking. 7 years earlier, Claire had left my house at 11:42 on a Thursday night. I remembered the time because the grandfather clock in the hall had chimed while she stood in front of me, with tears shining in her eyes. Rain pressed against the windows. The fire had burned low. Between us, on my desk, lay a copy of a private ledger that only 6 people knew existed. Pages had been photographed, names had been exposed. Trust had become a luxury none of us could afford. "Tell me you did not do this," I had said. Claire stared at the ledger, then at me. "Would you believe me?" "Answer the question." "That is not an answer, Adrian. My anger had been quiet. It always was. Someone accessed my office using your security code. Then someone had my code. No one had it. You did." Her voice trembled, but she did not step back. "And your brother did. Vincent. My older cousin in blood. My brother in every way that mattered. The man who had stood beside me through every loss. He had been the first to bring me the evidence against Claire. A security record, a photograph, a witness who claimed she had met with a rival attorney. Everything had fit together too cleanly. I had mistaken precision for truth. "Do not bring Vincent into this," I told her that night. Claire's face changed. Not guilt, disappointment. "You already chose him. I am giving you a chance to explain." "No, you are giving me a chance to confess." Thunder rolled somewhere above the city. She reached for the silver chain at her throat, the one I had given her on our first anniversary. Her fingers closed around it the way they always did when she was afraid. "I loved you," she whispered. The past tense struck harder than any accusation. "Claire, but love cannot survive in a room where it is always on trial." She removed the chain and placed it beside the ledger. I should have crossed the distance between us. I should have asked why she looked pale, why one hand kept drifting toward her stomach, why fear seemed to follow her every breath. Instead, I stood behind my desk and let pride speak for me. "If you walk out that door, do not come back." She looked at me for a long time. Then she said the sentence that had lived inside my silence for 7 years. "One day, you will understand what you chose to lose." Vincent told me running was proof. I accepted that because the alternative required me to admit I had driven away the only person who had ever seen a man beneath the power. The car stopped outside my office tower, pulling me back to the present. Marcus's tablet chimed before I opened the door. "I found Daniel," he said. I turned. "Who is he?" Marcus studied the screen, and something cautious entered his expression. "Daniel Bennett, Claire's older brother. He passed away 2 years ago." I looked down at the paper dinosaur. "Then Ethan made this for someone who is not coming back." "There is more," Marcus said. "Daniel's hospital records list a next of kin, Claire Bennett, but an emergency contact was added 2 weeks before he died." "Whose name?" Marcus turned the tablet toward me. The name on the screen belonged to the man Claire had warned me about 7 years earlier, and the man I had chosen to defend. Vincent Romano. Vincent had spent 7 years telling me Claire had disappeared because she was guilty. Now his name sat inside the one place he had never expected me to look. I read the hospital record twice before the meaning settled. Emergency contact. Added 14 days before Daniel Bennett died. "How did Vincent know Claire's brother?" I asked. Marcus shook his head. "There is no public connection between them. Public connections are for people who want to be found." I stepped out of the car and entered the building through the private garage. The elevator carried us 42 floors in silence. My office waited behind glass walls overlooking Manhattan, polished, controlled, untouched by the chaos tightening inside my chest. I placed Ethan's paper dinosaur on the desk beside the old silver necklace Claire had returned to me 7 years ago. I had kept it locked away, though I had told myself many times that I had forgotten it existed. The lie looked smaller now. "Pull everything," I said. "Daniel's medical bills, visitors, employment, phone records, property records. I want every place Vincent's name appears near Claire's life." Marcus nodded. "And Claire?" I looked toward the city. No one approaches her. No one follows Ethan where he can see. I will not frighten that child. The words surprised both of us. Marcus recovered first. Understood. By late afternoon, my desk was covered with fragments of a life I had never known Claire lived. A small apartment in Queens. Nursing assistant courses she never completed. Part-time work at a neighborhood bookstore. Pediatric appointments paid in cash. No luxury. No hidden fortune, nothing that looked like a reward for betrayal. She had not run into comfort, she had run into survival. Daniel had been the only constant. He rented the apartment in his name. He handled paperwork when Claire avoided official records. He worked double shifts for a records storage company, handling archived files and late-night server transfers, until illness forced him to stop. Then Vincent entered the timeline. Quietly. A pharmacy payment, a hospital deposit, a private transportation charge, small amounts hidden beneath shell companies I recognized. "He helped them," Marcus said. "Or controlled them," I replied. One document held my attention, a consent form from 6 years earlier. Daniel had authorized the release of medical information to Vincent Romano. Beneath the signature was a handwritten note from a hospital social worker. Patient requested that his sister's location remain confidential due to concerns involving the child's father. The child's father. My pulse slowed. Was Ethan already born? 3 months old, Marcus said. The room seemed to tilt. Claire had not merely been pregnant when she left. She had carried our son through fear, delivered him alone, and built a life where my name could not reach them. I thought of every birthday I had missed. First steps. First words. The first time Ethan folded paper into a dinosaur and decided it belonged to a father he had never met. "There is an address," Marcus said carefully. "Claire's current apartment. I should have sent someone. I should have waited until I understood the danger. Instead, 1 hour later, I stood across the street from a 4-story brick building in Astoria, holding the paper dinosaur inside my coat pocket. Snow had started falling. Thin white flakes disappearing on the pavement. Through a second-floor window, I saw Ethan sitting at a kitchen table beneath a yellow lamp. Claire stood beside him, helping with homework. The scene was painfully ordinary. A bowl of fruit, 2 mugs, a small plant leaning toward the glass. No guards, no gates, no protection, except the woman I had once accused of destroying me. Ethan looked up suddenly and pointed toward the window. Claire followed his gaze. She saw me standing beneath the streetlight. Her entire body went still. A minute later, she came outside without a coat. "You cannot be here," she said. Snow gathered in her hair. Vincent knew Daniel. The color drained from her face. "Where did you hear that?" "I saw the records." "Then you should stop looking." "Why?" She glanced toward the window, making sure Ethan was still inside. "Because Vincent did not help us out of kindness." "What did he want?" Claire wrapped her arms around herself against the cold. My silence. "About what?" Her eyes met mine, and for the first time since the hospital, anger gave way to exhaustion. "About the night I left. About the evidence in your office. About who really used my security code." I stepped closer. "Say his name." Claire shook her head. "Not here. Claire, you still do not understand." Her voice broke into a whisper. "Vincent did not hide me from you. He hid me from the people who would have realized Ethan existed." Ethan's small shadow crossed behind the curtain above us. Claire looked up, then grabbed my sleeve. "Leave now." "Who are you afraid of?" She stared past me toward a black sedan parked at the end of the block, its engine running beneath the falling snow. The same person who has been watching us since Ethan was born. The black sedan remained at the curb for 3 more seconds, then pulled away without hurry. That frightened Claire more than if it had sped off. Her fingers tightened around my sleeve. "Go upstairs," I said. "Lock the door behind you. You cannot give orders and expect me to obey anymore. This is not about obedience." I watched the sedan disappear around the corner. "It is about Ethan." His name changed everything between us. Claire looked toward the second-floor window, where our son still sat beneath the yellow kitchen light. "Come inside," she said at last. Marcus had remained outside the building after bringing me there, watching both entrances from across the street. I had told him not to approach unless the situation changed. Claire's apartment smelled like cinnamon tea and laundry soap. Ethan had moved to the couch with a book open across his knees. He looked up when I entered, surprised but not afraid. "The man from the hospital," he said. "Adrian," Claire corrected softly. Ethan repeated my name under his breath, as though deciding whether it suited me. "Are you staying for dinner?" Claire answered, before I could. "He is only here to talk." "That means no," Ethan said, returning to his book. The disappointment in his voice was small, but it found me anyway. Claire led me into the kitchen and closed the narrow folding door, leaving it open an inch so she could still see him. "Tell me everything," I said. "You are not ready for everything. I have spent 7 years believing a lie. Do not decide what I can survive." She set both palms against the counter. "The evidence in your office was placed there by Vincent. You saw him. I saw him leave. He used the service stairs and carried a leather folder under his coat. When I confronted him, he told me the ledger had already been copied. Why did you not tell me?" Claire laughed once, without humor. "I tried. You had already decided I was guilty before I opened my mouth." I remembered the coldness in my voice that night, the distance I had mistaken for strength. "Vincent said the information would expose financial records connected to powerful people," she continued. "Judges, contractors, city officials. He said if they learned I had seen him, they would erase every problem connected to the leak." My jaw tightened. "He threatened you." "He showed me a medical report from my doctor." Her hand drifted toward her stomach, repeating the gesture I had failed to understand 7 years earlier. "I was 8 weeks pregnant." The kitchen seemed to lose all sound. Even Ethan turning a page in the next room felt impossibly far away. "Vincent knew before I did," she said. "He had access to everything. He told me your child would become leverage the moment anyone discovered the pregnancy. He gave me one choice. Leave, accept the blame, and stay silent. And Daniel helped you. Daniel picked me up at a bus station in New Jersey. He rented this apartment. He found me work. He held my hand when Ethan was born." Her voice weakened, but she kept going. 3 months later, Daniel got sick. He fought it for almost 5 years. Long enough for Ethan to know his voice, his stories, and the way he made every small room feel safe. I looked toward Ethan. He had fallen asleep against the arm of the couch, the book resting on his chest. "Vincent paid some of Daniel's hospital bills because he needed all of you alive and hidden," I said. "Not protected," Claire replied. "Contained. Why keep watching you after Daniel died? To make sure I never contacted you." I looked through the narrow opening again. Did Vincent know Ethan was mine? He knew. 2 words. Quiet enough to destroy a man. Vincent had shared meals with me, entered my home without knocking, watched me search for Claire while knowing exactly where she was. Worse, he had known I had a son. "Why did Ethan write Uncle Daniel's name on the dinosaur?" I asked. Claire followed my gaze. "His class is having family day next week. They were asked to make something for the man who taught them the most. He chose Daniel. Daniel was the closest thing to a father Ethan had ever known." There was no accusation in her voice. She did not need one. I approached the couch and carefully lifted the book from Ethan's chest. He stirred, then opened his gray eyes. "Did you finish talking?" he asked sleepily. "Not yet." "Are you my mom's old friend?" Claire stopped breathing behind me. I looked at the child whose first 6 years had been shaped by secrets I had never questioned deeply enough. "I knew her a long time ago." Ethan considered that. "She does not have many friends." "I know. You look sad." I had been called dangerous, heartless, untouchable. No one had ever called me sad. Maybe I am. He shifted beneath the blanket. Mom says sad people should not be alone. Claire turned away, pressing a hand to her mouth. My phone vibrated in my pocket. Marcus had sent one message from across the street. Vincent Romano entered the building 5 minutes ago. Before I could speak, 3 slow knocks sounded at the apartment door. The 3 knocks came again, slow and measured, and Claire's face lost every trace of color. Ethan pushed himself upright on the couch, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "Who is it?" he asked. "Stay here," Claire said. I moved between them and the door. My phone still showed Marcus's message. Vincent Romano entered the building 5 minutes ago. I called Marcus. He answered immediately. "Where are you?" I asked. "Second floor stairwell." Vincent came alone. "His driver is outside. Stay close." I ended the call and looked through the peephole. Vincent stood beneath the weak hallway light in a charcoal overcoat, one hand resting on the silver head of his cane. He did not need it. He carried it because people remembered symbols of authority. 7 years ago, I would have opened the door without hesitation. He had been family, the man who taught me to distrust coincidence and treat loyalty like currency. Now every lesson sounded like a confession. "Claire," Vincent called through the door. "I know Adrian is with you." Ethan looked toward his mother. "Do I know him?" "No," she said, "but he knows us." I opened the door and left the security chain in place. Vincent's eyes met mine through the narrow opening. Surprise crossed his face, then vanished. "You should not be here," he said. "Neither should you. This is a private matter. Nothing involving my son is private from me." His fingers tightened around the cane. It was a small reaction, but it told me enough. "So she finally told you," he said. "She told me what you forced her to hide. I kept them alive." Claire stepped beside me. "You kept us afraid." I removed the chain and opened the door. Marcus appeared at the end of the hallway, close enough to help, far enough to leave the choice to me. Vincent entered slowly. His gaze moved across the apartment and stopped when he saw Ethan. For the first time, his control cracked. "You have grown," he said. Ethan moved closer to Claire. "Have you seen me before?" Vincent did not answer. I stepped between them. "Why did you frame Claire?" He removed his gloves, one finger at a time. "The ledger was going to be discovered. Someone had to carry the blame. You chose her. I chose the person whose disappearance would cause the least damage. She was pregnant. I knew." The room went silent. "You knew she carried my child, and you sent her away." Vincent's expression remained controlled, but his voice lowered. "I sent her somewhere our enemies would not search. I did betray you," he continued, "but Malcolm wanted Claire erased completely. I gave him a disappearance instead. I told him she had fled the country, that there was no child, and that she would never return. As long as Claire remained silent, I could keep him from looking closer." Claire stared at him. "You did not protect us. You watched us." "Yes," Vincent replied. "Every apartment, every hospital visit, every school form. I needed to know you were alive, and I needed to know you were still hidden. You survived because I kept Malcolm convinced you were no longer a threat. But you were never free, because I could not risk Adrian finding you. You let me search for her," I said. "You let me believe she had betrayed me. You were easier to lead when you were angry. The honesty of it was colder than any denial." Claire wrapped one arm around Ethan. "Daniel thought you were helping us. Daniel understood that silence had a price. He was sick and desperate, and still capable of making choices." Ethan stepped forward before Claire could stop him. "Did you make my mom sad?" Vincent looked down at him. "I made decisions that kept her alive. That is not what I asked." The room went still. Ethan had done what powerful men rarely could. He had removed the explanation and left only the truth. Vincent lowered his gaze. "Yes," he said. "I made her sad." Ethan took Claire's hand again. I watched Vincent carefully. "Who is Malcolm?" I asked, though the name already felt familiar. "The man who designed the lie," Vincent replied. "I followed his plan because I believed I could control the consequences." Who else knew about Ethan? No one who could prove he existed. That was not my question. Vincent glanced toward the window. Snow tapped softly against the glass. Malcolm suspected Claire was hiding something. Daniel refused to speak. I paid the medical bills because desperation made silence easier to maintain. Claire's voice dropped. And the car outside. Vincent looked at her. It is not mine. Ethan turned toward the kitchen window and lifted the edge of the blind before anyone could stop him. His face changed. "Mom," he whispered, "the black car is back." The black car sat beneath the streetlight with its headlights off, snow gathering along the hood. No one stepped out. No one needed to. Its silence was the warning. Claire pulled Ethan away from the kitchen window and lowered the blind. "We need to leave," she said. Vincent did not argue. For the first time since entering the apartment, he looked less like the man controlling the room and more like someone finally trapped inside his own decisions. Marcus moved to the doorway and checked the hall. "The rear stairwell is clear," he said. "It may not stay that way." I turned to Claire. "Take only what Ethan needs. I am not leaving with you. You are not leaving with Vincent. I am not leaving with anyone who thinks my life is theirs to arrange." Her voice stayed quiet, but every word held. Ethan stood beside the couch, clutching his paper dinosaur against his coat. I lowered my voice. "Then choose where we go. Choose the route. Choose who drives. But choose now." Claire looked at her son, and the argument ended there. 5 minutes, she said, before disappearing into the bedroom. Vincent crossed to the window and lifted one edge of the blind. They found her faster than I expected. "Malcolm's people?" I asked. "Most likely. You told him she had left the country." "I did. Then how did he find her?" Vincent released the blind and faced me. "Malcolm still has a contact inside St. Catherine's security office. Your name appeared in an incident report beside Claire's. The moment he learned she was with a 6-year-old boy who looked like you, he understood what I had hidden." The answer settled hard inside me. My appearance at the hospital had not created the danger, but it had torn open the fragile wall that had kept Claire and Ethan out of sight. Claire returned with a backpack over one shoulder. Ethan wore his green coat and winter boots. "There is a service exit behind the laundry room," she said. "It opens into the alley." Marcus nodded. "My car is 2 blocks east." "Too obvious," Claire replied. "There is a bakery on 31st Avenue. The owner knows me. He keeps a delivery van behind the building." Even frightened, she thought clearly. 7 years earlier, I had mistaken her refusal to surrender for disloyalty. Now I saw it for what it was, strength without permission. "We use Claire's plan," I said. Vincent looked toward me. "You cannot take them to one of your properties." "I know. Malcolm knows every address connected to you." "Then we go somewhere he does not know matters." We moved through the rear hallway in silence. The building smelled of radiator heat, detergent, and old paint. Ethan held Claire's hand with one hand and the dinosaur with the other. I had returned it to him before we left. At the laundry room, the overhead lights flickered. Marcus checked his phone. The camera system just went offline. Vincent's expression hardened. "They are inside the building." Ethan looked up. "Who is inside?" Claire crouched in front of him. "People who are confused about where we belong. Do we know where we belong?" he asked. Something passed across her face. Pain, then resolve. "We are figuring it out." Marcus opened the service door. Cold air rushed inside. The alley stretched behind the building, narrow and covered in fresh snow. A single bulb burned above the bakery gate across the block. Vincent buttoned his overcoat and turned toward the front stairwell. "I brought their attention here," he said. "I will give them someone to follow." Marcus stepped in front of him. "They may recognize you." "That is the point." Vincent looked at me. "Get Claire and Ethan out through the alley. I will leave through the lobby in my own car and lead them toward Manhattan. They will know you are alone," I said. "Not immediately. And when they do." Vincent glanced toward Ethan, then back at me. "Then I will finally pay for one of my own decisions." Claire stared at him. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Vincent reached inside his suit jacket and removed a sealed envelope, yellowed along the edges. "Take this before I go." Claire's expression changed. "What is it?" "Daniel gave it to me before he died." She did not move. "You had something from Daniel all this time?" Vincent looked down at the envelope. I kept the letter because Daniel knew the truth, and as long as the evidence existed, Malcolm could never fully control me. Then why did you not give it to Adrian? She asked. Because the truth protected me only while no one else possessed it. The admission was ugly, but honest. He held the envelope toward me. Daniel told me to deliver it when Adrian finally learned about Ethan. I took it from him. The paper felt thin, almost weightless, yet Vincent had built 6 years of fear around it. On the front, written in Daniel's uneven hand, were 7 words that made the night suddenly colder. Adrian must know who ordered the betrayal. Vincent turned toward the hallway. Marcus opened his mouth to object, but Vincent stopped him with one look. "Go with them," he said. "That is where your loyalty belongs tonight." Then he walked toward the front stairwell without looking back. Claire opened the service door wider. We stepped into the alley as the sound of Vincent's cane faded toward the lobby. Snow pressed softly beneath our shoes. Halfway across the alley, Ethan slipped. I caught him before he reached the pavement. His hands closed around my coat, and he stared up at me. "You are strong," he said. "Not always. Mom says strong people make other people feel safe." Claire paused ahead of us. Her eyes met mine, but she said nothing. Ethan kept one hand in mine when we continued. He did not ask permission. Neither did I. At the bakery, Claire knocked 3 times on the rear door. An elderly man opened it, took one look at her face, and stepped aside. "The van keys are on the hook," he said. "No questions. No demand for an explanation. Just kindness given without control." Claire helped Ethan into the back seat while Marcus checked the street. In the distance, an engine started near the front of the apartment building. A black sedan pulled away moments later, followed by Vincent's car heading toward Manhattan. His plan had worked. For now. I climbed into the van with Daniel's letter inside my coat, and Marcus started the engine. As the bakery disappeared behind us, I looked through the rear window at the empty street and understood that Vincent had finally done something he could not control. He had chosen to give us time. The bakery van smelled like flour, coffee, and cold metal. Claire sat beside Ethan in the back, while Marcus drove through quiet side streets, avoiding the main avenues. I held Daniel's envelope beneath the dim ceiling light, my name staring back at me in uneven black ink. Vincent was no longer following us. Somewhere behind, he was leading Malcolm's people toward Manhattan, buying us time with the one thing he had always protected most carefully, himself. Claire watched the envelope in my hands. "Open it," she said. I broke the seal carefully. Inside was a folded letter and a small flash drive taped to one corner. Daniel's handwriting filled both sides of the page. He began without greeting. "Adrian, if you are reading this, then Claire survived long enough for the truth to matter. The ledger was never the real target. It was bait. Someone wanted you to believe the betrayal came from inside your home because anger would make you close ranks, trust fewer people, and hand more control to Vincent." I stopped reading. Streetlight moved across Claire's face as the van turned. "Keep going," she whispered. I forced my eyes back to the page. Vincent did not create the plan, but he followed it. The order came from Malcolm Reed, your family attorney. He arranged the false security records, the witness statement, and the copied pages. His goal was not to destroy your organization. It was to control it through fear. Vincent believed he could manage the consequences. He was wrong. Claire closed her eyes. "Malcolm handled your legal accounts," she said. "He handled everything," I replied. "Trusts, property, contracts, the quiet structure beneath my entire life. Malcolm had attended my father's funeral and advised me through every change of power. He had also been the first to recommend that Vincent take greater control after Claire disappeared." I continued reading. The flash drive contains copies of emails, payments, and recorded instructions. "Before I became ill, I worked nights for the records company that maintained Malcolm Reed's archived servers. He ordered several folders erased after Claire disappeared. I made copies before the deletion was completed. Vincent later gave me access to payment records, believing I had only part of the truth. He never knew how much I recovered. The explanation settled several questions at once. Daniel had not stumbled into the evidence by luck. He had found it because Malcolm trusted invisible systems more than ordinary people. The letter continued. Malcolm threatened to expose Ethan if Vincent stopped cooperating. If anything happens to me, Claire must leave New York. Adrian must understand that his greatest mistake was not loving the wrong woman. It was trusting the wrong man. The final line was written more heavily than the rest. Tell Ethan his mother was never running from his father. She was running toward his future. For several seconds, only the tires against wet pavement filled the van. Ethan had fallen asleep against Claire's shoulder, his paper dinosaur resting in his lap. I folded the letter slowly. "Where are we going?" Marcus asked from the driver's seat. "The old house in Westchester," Claire said. I looked at her. No one has used it in years. That is why Daniel trusted it. I sold it. Vincent transferred it into a small trust under Daniel's name years ago, she explained. It was part of the arrangement that kept us hidden. Malcolm never knew the trust existed. The answer fit Vincent too well. Protection disguised as ownership. Safety built from control. 40 minutes later, the van turned onto a snow-covered road lined with bare trees. The house appeared beyond an iron gate, dark except for a single porch light. Marcus parked near the side entrance. Claire woke Ethan gently. He blinked at the house. "Are we staying here?" "For tonight," she said. Inside, dust covered the furniture, but the fireplace still worked. Marcus checked every room, while Claire found blankets in an upstairs closet. Then he returned to the study and placed a black case on the desk. He opened the encrypted laptop he carried for field investigations, disconnected it from every network, and inserted Daniel's flash drive. Folders appeared across the screen, archived emails, payment records, trust documents, audio files. Each item carried dates and identification codes from Malcolm's office servers. Marcus opened the final folder. "This one is different," he said. The file was an archived video conference, automatically recorded by Malcolm's office system 7 years earlier. The visible participant was Malcolm, seated behind his desk. The second participant had joined remotely, her camera turned off. Malcolm adjusted a document in front of him and spoke with the careful language of a man accustomed to hiding intent inside professional words. Once Claire is removed from his confidence, Adrian will rely on Vincent for every internal decision. We will not need Adrian's position. We will only need access to the man standing beside him. A woman's voice answered through the speakers. Calm, controlled, familiar enough to stop my breathing. "And the child?" Malcolm looked toward the screen. "The pregnancy makes Claire easier to move. Fear will accomplish what persuasion cannot." The woman remained silent for a moment. Then her camera turned on. Her face appeared beside Malcolm's on the recording, elegant and composed, with the same grey eyes I saw every morning in the mirror. Claire gripped the back of my chair. I stared at the screen, unable to move. The woman who had approved the lie, hidden my son, and turned my trust against me, was my mother. My mother's face remained frozen on the screen, elegant and composed, as though she had discussed a business arrangement instead of erasing 7 years of our lives. For a long moment, I heard nothing but the fire behind me and Ethan breathing beneath a blanket near the hearth. Claire stood beside my chair, one hand gripping the wood. "She knew," Claire whispered. "Before I left, she knew about Ethan." I opened the recording again. My mother's voice filled the study. "Adrian was becoming careless. Claire made him believe he could live like an ordinary man." Malcolm leaned toward his camera. "And that concerned you. It made him vulnerable." Malcolm asked what would happen if Claire refused to disappear. My mother answered without hesitation. "She will cooperate once she understands the child is safer without him." I closed the laptop. The dark screen reflected a man I barely recognized. My mother had spent my childhood teaching me that family was the only loyalty that survived. She had used that lesson to separate me from my own son. "What are you going to do?" Claire asked. 7 years earlier, I would have answered with anger. I would have issued orders and called the result justice. Instead, I looked at Ethan and understood that every choice built on fear had brought me to him too late. "I am going to tell the truth," I said. "All of it. Over the next 3 weeks, Marcus worked through an independent attorney who verified Daniel's files and delivered authenticated copies to the United States Attorney's Office and a federal investigative task force. Vincent returned safely after leading Malcolm's men away from us. 2 days later, he provided sworn testimony detailing the false records, the hidden payments, and the pressure Malcolm had placed on him. Only after the evidence was secured did selected documents reach 2 investigative reporters. Court orders followed. Several accounts connected to Malcolm's shell companies were frozen, and former partners began cooperating once they realized the truth could no longer be contained. The evidence also exposed parts of my own organization. My attorneys warned me that cooperation would cost me businesses, influence, and possibly my freedom. For the first time, I did not ask how much power I could save. I asked what kind of life Ethan deserved to inherit. I surrendered records I had once believed no one would ever see. I closed companies, built on intimidation, and placed legitimate businesses under independent management. My mother called only once. "Come home," she said. "We can still correct this." I stood outside the attorney's office while rain darkened the Manhattan sidewalk. "There is nothing left to correct. Claire has confused you again." "No, she showed me what I became without her." My mother's voice hardened. "Everything I did was to protect you. Protection that requires a child to grow up without his father is only control wearing a kinder name. You will lose everything." I watched Claire through the office window as she helped Ethan zip his green coat. I already lost what mattered. Now I am accepting the cost of finding it again. I ended the call. A private laboratory confirmed the truth 2 days later using samples Claire provided voluntarily. Ethan was my son. There was no longer any room for doubt, but Claire did not allow that result to become a command. I visited Ethan twice each week. I arrived when I said I would. I helped with homework, listened to stories about dinosaurs, and learned that he hated peas, but loved blueberry pancakes. Claire never promised forgiveness. I never asked her to. 3 months later, we returned to the Westchester house for Family Day weekend. The legal investigation was still moving forward, and my future remained uncertain, but the danger surrounding Claire and Ethan had begun to lift. Ethan sat at the kitchen table folding green paper while Claire poured coffee. When he finished, he slid a new dinosaur toward me. 2 crooked figures had been drawn beside it, one tall and one small. Across the bottom, in uneven handwriting, were the words, "For Adrian." Not Dad. Not yet. It was more than I deserved. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "Anything. Did you know about me before the hospital?" "No. Would you have come if you knew?" My throat tightened. "I would have come the moment I knew." He studied my face, searching for something only he could recognize. Then he climbed down from his chair and held out his hand. "There is a creek behind the house," he said. "Mom said Uncle Daniel used to take her there." I looked at Claire. She nodded once. Outside, the snow had melted, and the first signs of spring showed between the trees. Ethan kept his hand in mine as we walked down the hill. Halfway to the creek, he looked up. "Maybe one day I can call you Dad." I could not speak for several steps. Then I tightened my fingers around his. One day is enough for me. I had spent years building a world where no one could take anything from me. In the end, the only life worth keeping began when a little boy chose to let me walk beside him.